Well, I want to first say that I'm very excited that we're talking about a good death. And I think a good death is really dependent on who we are as people, isn't it? How many of you have really thought about what would be your ultimate perfect death? Has anybody here? Are there martinis involved? Are you at the beach? I've thought about mine. And so I think it really depends who we are and where we come from, and Betty will address some of those issues. But I think first, a good death means that you're peaceful, you're comfortable, you've got an expert pain management, symptom management. We know in the 1990s, investigators started looking at this issue, the big D word that was taboo in the House of Medicine, death. And here we are, how exciting that we're actually talking about death in public without dark sunglasses on today. So they found that doctors, and this is going to shock you right out of your seats, that we didn't do such a good job at treating pain, even in patients who are dying, patients with cancer. And shame on us. And part of that was our education. So I think that we now understand that somebody who's in the process, in their last months, year, days, minutes, we must treat their pain aggressively, let them be peaceful. If they have depression, we need to address that so that they can relax and attend to the other steps that happen when someone dies.
So Betty, perhaps you can carry on. We've heard about the physical pain and peace. Are there other issues that are important that help us conceive what a good death is?
Sure. In much of our training with nurses around the country and around the world, we're often asked this question, what is a good death? And that seems like a hard thing to define until I always ask people the question, if you or someone you love is dying, what would you want for them? And everyone, it's very clear. If someone I love is dying, I would want them to be comfortable, so physical issues are very important. Psychologically, I would not want them to be fearful. I would not want them to be anxious or depressed. Socially, if someone I love is dying, it's not a medical event. It's a life event. It's a human event. And so I would want to know that I and other people they love are with them. And finally, spiritually. And we use the term spiritual care in end-of-life care in the broadest sense. It is not just one's religion. For many people, having a spiritual care provider present or having rituals such as prayer or blessing are important. But for other people, the spiritual aspect of end-of-life care, many patients say, what I'd like to do more than anything in the world is, could you just roll me out of this ICU and let me feel the sun on my face? To connect with the world is really good end-of-life care. So I think the take-home message is it's incredibly complex, in some ways incredibly simple in others, but what is also very real is that if we went around the room tonight and asked every one of you what would be important to you if you or someone you love was dying, we would hear a different story from each person. And so what we should learn from that is, how will we know how to provide good end-of-life care unless we take the time to ask?
So we are in the country that spends more on health care than any other country in the world. In fact, almost twice as much as the number 2 country. We also are in a country where we have federal health insurance for the elderly, yet we spend 30% of the entire Medicare budget. 30% is spent in the last 30 days of someone's life. My question to you is given what you've defined for us as a good death, being pain-free, peace, comfortable, socially connected, spiritually whole, however you define that, what are the barriers? Why are we not getting to that goal? Why don't we start with you, Betty?
Sure. I think part of this is really the history of where we are in time. In not so terribly long ago, in the lives of, for some of us, or certainly our parents or grandparents, if someone became ill, they either got well pretty quickly or they died. And somewhere along the way, in really just the last few decades, we invented intensive care units and very high-powered antibiotics and renal dialysis and the ability to transplant organs. And along the way, over those decades, we as a society have come to believe that death is avoidable.